Hey there, deep divers. Ready for another fascinating plunge?
Always. I love these deep dives.
Me too. This time we're diving into a single source.
Oh.
Yeah. The Joe Rogan Experience episode with Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Ooh, Tyson. He's always got something interesting to say.
Right. And we'll be exploring all sorts of things, like his approach to science education, his skepticism about UFOs and aliens.
That's fascinating.
Oh, it is. For instance, right off the bat, Tyson was talking about how set designers mess up the way leaves are scattered in the streets in, like, movies and shows.
Huh. Really?
Apparently, yeah. Like, they never get it quite right.
That's so Tyson, though. Noticing these small details and finding the science in them.
He does the same thing when he calls out Joe Rogan's studio ceiling.
What about it?
It's got all these evenly spaced stars, which is totally inaccurate to how they're actually distributed in the universe.
Uh-huh. Oh, man. Classic Tyson.
Right. And it's amazing how he can connect these, like, random observations to these huge scientific principles.
It's a gift, for sure.
Speaking of which, let's talk about Tyson's approach to education.
Okay.
He uses this awesome analogy of a tennis match
Oh, yeah. I like that one.
to explain how he tailors his explanations to different audiences. Like, he's not just lecturing. He's engaging with them in this back-and-forth exchange.
So it's like he's making sure everyone feels included and challenged.
Exactly. He's serving up knowledge in a way that anyone can understand.
I love that.
Right. Regardless of your background or how much you already know.
Mm.
And he even throws in little things specifically for older generations, like mentioning the Cold War for those over 75.
That's so thoughtful.
I know. Now let's move on to something that always gets people talking, UFOs and aliens.
Oh, boy. Here we go.
You know Tyson, though? He's always got to bring that healthy dose of skepticism.
Yeah, he doesn't just blindly believe everything he hears.
Exactly. He's not dismissing the possibility of extraterrestrial life, but he's emphasizing the need for evidence-based reasoning.
So, like, anecdotal accounts and blurry pictures aren't enough for him?
Nope, not at all. He makes this really interesting point about how many cameras we have nowadays.
That's true. We're constantly recording things.
Right, we're capturing footage of events that would have gone totally unnoticed in the past.
Like what?
Well, like that magpie dropping stones into a bottle to raise the water level.
Oh, yeah. That was a crazy video.
Right, like it's this surprisingly complex behavior. And we have it on camera.
Huh. Good point.
Or think about videos of buses getting tossed around by tornadoes.
Okay. Yeah.
We have all this footage of these rare events.
Yeah.
So Tyson's like, why don't we have clear, detailed footage of UFOs then?
Makes you think.
It really does.
Yeah.
He's not saying it's impossible, but he's challenging us to ask for more proof.
Which is fair, I think.
Absolutely. Now, it's interesting, though, because even though Tyson is skeptical of a lot of UFO claims, he does support investigations into UAPs.
UAPs?
Yeah, unidentified aerial phenomena, especially when there's advanced sensor data involved.
Oh, okay. So he's not completely ruling out the possibility of something unknown.
Right. Because some UAPs could be advanced tech from other countries,
Right.
which is definitely something we need to look into for national security reasons.
I see.
And then there's that whole Pentagon UFO report that everyone was talking about.
Oh, right.
The Pentagon confirmed the existence of UAPs, but Tyson emphasizes that unidentified doesn't automatically mean alien.
Makes sense.
He thinks there are more likely explanations. And he doesn't buy into the idea that the government is hiding secret alien knowledge.
I mean, it does seem a little far-fetched.
Right. Tyson argues that in today's world, a discovery as big as aliens would be almost impossible to keep secret.
Yeah, with everyone having cameras and social media, it would be like trying to contain a volcano.
Exactly. Billions of people have cameras. Think about it. A secret that big, no way it stays hidden for long.
The internet can actually be a good thing, then, in a way.
Right. Despite all its flaws, it can help prevent those large-scale cover-ups.
That's an interesting way to look at it.
So let's debunk another popular misconception that Tyson talks about. The myth that we only use 10% of our brains.
Oh, yeah. That one drives me crazy.
Me too. It's a classic example of how misinformation can spread like wildfire.
Even when it goes against science.
Exactly. And get this. This myth actually started from a misinterpretation of a scientific statement.
What? Really?
Yeah. A brain scientist wrote that we only understand what 10% of the brain does.
Okay.
But somehow that got twisted into the idea that we only use 10% of our brain power.
Wow. Talk about a game of telephone gone wrong.
I know, right?
Yeah.
And this myth has had some real-world consequences. Like, it's created these unrealistic expectations about human intelligence.
Yeah, and led to all those fictional portrayals of telekinesis and superpowers.
Exactly. And Tyson actually calls out the movie Lucy for using this tired trope.
What does he say about it?
He argues that even if we only use 10% of our brains increasing, that usage wouldn't suddenly give us control over physical matter.
It's a good reminder that science fiction shouldn't always be taken literally.
For sure. So the takeaway here is to question those assumptions and be wary of claims that sound too good to be true.
Like the 10% brain myth.
Exactly. It shows how a misinterpretation can turn into this widespread belief.
Often fueled by wishful thinking.
Right. So it's important to find credible sources of information, especially now when misinformation is everywhere.
Yeah, and Tyson encourages us to be critical thinkers.
Absolutely. To question what we hear and consult experts before we jump to conclusions.
Good advice. So are you ready to dive into some of those big unanswered questions about the universe?
You bet. Let's do it. And Tyson's latest book, Cosmic Queries, is all about those big questions.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of that one.
It explores all those questions that science hasn't been able to answer definitively.
Like what?
Well, things like the origin of the universe, the nature of dark matter, and the possibility of life beyond Earth.
Whoa, that's some heavy stuff.
It is. He's really pushing the boundaries of our understanding.
So it's safe to say it's a little more complex than the whole leaves in the street thing.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Just a tad. You know, in Cosmic Queries, Tyson also introduces this really interesting way to think about truth.
Okay, how's that?
He breaks it down into 3 types: personal, political, and objective.
I never thought about it like that before.
It's a really helpful way to differentiate between beliefs that are subjective versus those grounded in evidence.
So personal truths would be like those that are deeply meaningful to an individual,
Yeah,
like based on faith or personal experiences.
exactly. And those aren't necessarily verifiable by external means.
Right. But Tyson argues that we should still respect them.
Absolutely. Like some of those religious beliefs, for example.
Okay, that makes sense. What about political truths?
Well, Tyson describes those as beliefs that gain traction through repetition.
Oh, so like they might not have any basis in reality, but they get repeated so often that people start to believe them?
Exactly. They align with pre-existing biases and get reinforced through constant exposure.
Kind of like that saying, repeat a lie often enough and it becomes the truth.
Right. Which is a little disturbing when you really think about it, especially with how echo chambers and filter bubbles work online.
Yeah, it's so easy to get trapped in this cycle of misinformation.
So how do we escape that?
Well, Tyson highlights objective truths as the gold standard.
Oh, okay. So truths that are established through scientific methods.
Right. They're verifiable, testable, and based on evidence that can be independently corroborated.
Like the boiling point of water.
Exactly. We can all measure it, experiment with it, and arrive at the same answer regardless of our beliefs.
That's the power of science.
Yeah.
It provides this framework for understanding the world that's based on evidence and reason.
Not just opinions or ideology.
Exactly. So how does all this apply to those big, unanswered questions about the universe?
Well, Tyson uses a really cool example to illustrate the potential problems with asking certain questions without considering this framework.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
It's the Pinocchio paradox. You know the story, Pinocchio's nose grows when he lies.
Oh, yeah, of course.
But what if Pinocchio says, my nose is growing?
That's a tough one. If his nose is growing, he's telling the truth, so it shouldn't grow. But if it's not growing, he's lying, so it should grow.
It's a paradox. And Tyson uses this to show that some questions might be inherently flawed.
Because they're based on a system of rules that makes them meaningless.
Right. It's like asking what's north of the North Pole.
Oh, I see. The question itself breaks down.
Exactly. So we need to think carefully about the framework of truth before we even start asking certain questions.
So, like, what came before the Big Bang?
That's a great example. Tyson suggests that this question might be like the Pinocchio paradox.
Because it assumes this linear concept of time that may not even apply when we're talking about the universe.
Exactly. It's like trying to fit a square peg into a round hole.
Okay, whoa. My brain just did a backflip.
Yeah.
But let's keep going down this rabbit hole. Tell me about the expanding universe and this big rip idea.
Okay, so we know that the universe isn't static. It's constantly expanding with galaxies moving further apart.
And that's one of the main pieces of evidence for the Big Bang Theory, right?
Right. Now, the Big Rip is this hypothetical scenario where the expansion just keeps accelerating.
Right.
Until eventually the fabric of space-time itself tears apart.
Whoa. Hold on. That's intense.
It is. It's a mind-blowing concept.
No kidding. But here's something I've always wondered. If the Big Bang happened billions of years ago, how can we still see it?
That's where things get really cool. We can still see the birth of the universe because the light from those distant newly forming galaxies is only just now reaching us.
So the light has been traveling for billions of years, and we're just seeing it now.
Exactly. It's like looking back in time.
Wow. That's incredible. And it gets even weirder, right? Tyson says that as the universe expands, we might reach a point where we don't see any new galaxies forming.
Yeah, like we've hit the edge of matter as we know it.
So there's a limit to what we can observe, even with super powerful telescopes.
That's the current thinking. It would mean we've reached a boundary where light just hasn't had enough time to reach us yet.
Okay, that's like staring into the abyss of the unknown.
It's both terrifying and exhilarating.
It is. And speaking of mind-blowing concepts, what about multiverse theory and simulation theory?
Oh, yes. Let's dive into those. So multiverse theory suggests that our universe is just one of many.
Like there are other universes out there.
Right. And they might have totally different laws of physics, even different values for fundamental constants like pi.
Wait, different values for pi. That's messing with my head.
I know, right? It's wild. And how these universes interact, or if they even do, is still a big mystery.
So multiverse theory is about alternate realities. What about simulation theory? Is that the one where we're all living in a computer program?
Yep, that's the one. And get this, Tyson himself says he'd bet yes if he had to gamble on whether we're in a simulation.
Really? The guy who's all about evidence believes that.
Well, he points to the crazy advancements in computing power and virtual reality.
Okay, yeah. Those are getting pretty sophisticated.
Right. And Tyson argues that if we keep going down this path, we'll eventually be able to create simulations that are indistinguishable from reality.
And if we can do it, maybe someone else already has.
Exactly. Maybe a more advanced civilization created the simulation we're living in.
Whoa, I need a minute to process this. We've gone from talking about UFOs to living in a computer program created by some super intelligent beings.
I know, right? It's mind-boggling. But that's what I love about exploring these questions. They push us to the edge of our understanding and make us confront these huge mysteries.
It's like a workout for the brain. And speaking of pushing limits, Tyson has some really interesting thoughts about collaboration and scientific discovery.
Oh, yeah. How so?
He's all about bouncing ideas off of colleagues and embracing different perspectives.
Like that.
Me too. He even talks about coming up with a research idea with a biologist at a wine tasting.
Haha, that's awesome.
Right. Shows that breakthroughs can happen in the most unexpected ways.
So it's not always about the lone genius working in isolation.
Exactly. Sometimes the best ideas come from collaboration and merging different disciplines.
Kind of like what we're doing right now.
Right. Two different perspectives coming together to create something hopefully insightful and engaging.
I think we're doing all right.
I hope so. But remember Tyson's point about those hypothetical aliens who get their energy from photosynthesis?
Oh, yeah. He said they might see us as barbaric for eating other life forms to survive.
Right. It really makes you think.
It does. It challenges our whole perspective on life and survival.
Makes you wonder how they'd react to a barbecue.
Right. Like, could we even explain it to them in a way that wouldn't make us seem like monsters?
That's a really interesting question. Like, if you met an alien civilization that had never seen humans before, how would you explain our need to eat?
That's a tough one. How do you explain something so basic but so potentially off-putting to another species?
It really challenges you to think outside of our own assumptions about life.
It does, and I think that's what's so great about this deep dive.
I agree. It sparked so much curiosity and made us question things we might never have thought about otherwise.
Exactly. It's like opening a door to a whole new way of seeing the world.
And that's what we hope we've done for you too, deep divers, giving you some food for thought and left you wanting to explore these ideas further.
So until next time, keep those minds curious.
And keep exploring the wonders of the universe.